I was willing to ask questions. I was willing to not try to look smart all the time. I was just like, hey, I want to learn too, and I've got a group behind me that can help.
For those of you who are just tuning in, I've already been chatting with our guest off screen for about 5 minutes, and we've already made jokes about sacrificial animals and doing pull-ups at the office. So we know this is going to be a good episode, but I'm super pumped because today's is interesting. So we've had a lot of agents in New York and LA, and they sell like 2 homes once every decade for $100 million, and they think they're enough to be on the podcast. But as you guys, the listeners, know, that's not that interesting. So today, I'm sitting down with Evan Crawford, who's in the Auburn-Opelika area in Alabama, and he has an interesting story. He was a former baseball player, although I'm sure baseball's still in his blood, turned realtor, and he was literally doing his tests and exams and studying while he was in the locker room, while all the other guys, I'm sure, were chewing and being ridiculous. He was getting ready for real estate, and fast forward a couple of years, their team's doing $50 million in sales in a normal market. So, Evan, dude, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. I think I about tapped out after sacrificing animals. That's really all I got. But
it doesn't get any better than. I mean, I hope you're not on Twitter because that is enough to probably get you canceled.
True.
Or to get your own Netflix documentary, which I think most realtors would like to have.
It was just a joke, by the way.
Yeah. Why don't we? I don't know what things are like in Alabama, but it's all good. I want to kind of get right into it. So a theme that we've noticed over the last couple of years of interviewing agents is that people that are successful or ultra successful in one area of their life tend to be successful in real estate. You made it to the very top of every 10-year-old boy's dream. Like, you were on the Toronto Blue Jays, you were on the White Sox, you played for a lot of other interesting teams, and you left all that for real estate, which is probably the only career in the world more exciting than baseball, but maybe that's just for me personally. Why don't you walk me through your story of how you got to where you are now and where you came from?
Yeah. Well, I think, just to kind of piggyback on what you just said, probably the reason that happens for people that have seen some success, and I'm still not playing, and I'm young enough to probably. So the biggest part of that is probably the failure aspect of it, and kind of getting through a lot of failure. And that's something that, you being in the real estate world, you probably have tasted some failure here and there. And it's just one of those things where you just kind of got to wake up the next day and do the same routine that you were doing the day before. And I think that's a correlation to answer that question of, how you see that from some people. And I obviously dealt with a lot of failure and just kind of continued to move forward. And then from my real estate side, I mean, I grew up around it. My grandfather was a real estate agent. My uncles, my mom, I kind of grew up doing that. My grandfather built a couple houses. I've laid sod since I was 7. So I was, always there and around it. And so when I was getting done with my career, which was seeing more and more failure toward the end there, that I realized, hey, I'm gonna start this ship up and start taking my classes. So yeah, I'll be sitting in my locker taking real estate classes and getting told, they'd be like, "What are you doing, nerd? What are you doing in your locker, reading a book and getting on your computer?" And I'm like, "Hey, man, I got a kid now at home, and I'm ready to start this thing up because it's always been a passion of mine." So that's kind of where that went. And then, I immediately, as soon as that season was over, I came home and I jumped right in and was ready to go.
I feel like there's a really interesting corollary there. So many realtors who are on this show are also looking to recruit other realtors to be on their team, right?
Right.
And I think your story highlights something interesting in that you can find people who are really great at what they do in one industry and try to figure out, do the skills that made them great there have any correlation to real estate? Is there a reasonable chance that if they put in that level of practice, if they put in that level of being willing to fail, could they do well? And so when I'm recruiting, that's what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for salespeople who were really good at something else, who had a lot of connections, who weren't afraid to put a process together and just go through that process day in after day in after day in. Now, sometimes the industry just doesn't do anymore.
Yeah, I think that's probably, if you look at a CEO of a large company and they're looking at people who went to grad school, most of that is not even, I would say, hey, how good were your grades? It was like, hey, did they have a process to study? Did they have a process to make it through the grueling 4 years of grad school and just survive. Maybe again, seeing some failure and then just pick themselves up and said, "Oh, I got to study harder to make it through this." And so I think it's just a more of a characteristic than it is a knowledge maybe. Just because, yeah, we've gone through the same thing with having agents here and there, and it's just like you can kind of tell who's willing to take a skin knee and get back up and go, because that's what you really have to do. Because deals fall apart, people people might fire you for reasons that you didn't deserve in this industry, and you've got to not take it personally. You've got to wake up tomorrow and say, all right, I'm going to go back to making some calls and reaching out to my sphere, reaching out to people within the community, seeing who I can help. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing to me, is like, I want to see somebody that's kind of been through it a little bit, wasn't really handed everything, because in this industry you're not really handed much.
Well, and I feel like that's probably something like we should just address right now. So I think a lot of people might assume, possibly wrongly, that when you transition from being like a professional athlete or a Grammy award-winning singer to being a realtor, that all of a sudden you're famous, you're going to get all these deals. Was that the case for you, or did it come in a more natural, organic way?
Yeah, no, I mean, contrary to popular belief, I think more so is the dumb jock. Hey, I don't want a dumb jock handling my finances, the biggest purchase I'll ever make in my life. So maybe, obviously name recognition might be helpful, but overcoming the stigma of like, you might be athletic, you might be fun to hang out with, but I don't know if I want you handling my big financial decisions that I'm making. So I think, no, I don't know if that was a part of it. It was more
Well,
so
how did
just
you overcome that? Because I think realtors hear excuses all the time from clients. Like people get into real estate and they think, well, I know a ton of people, so I'm going to get business. But then they say
well,
exactly what they told you. I don't know if I want to work with the jock, or oh, I don't know if I want to work with a younger realtor, or
right.
I don't know if I want to work with a new realtor. I mean, there's a million excuses out there, because at the end of the day, all of these people know other real estate agents. So how did you, Evan, overcome that and slowly build your book of business?
I mean, I think a lot of it is just continuously studying the market and understanding the market and being prepared for those conversations. Because people are going to test you, especially when you're young. They're going to ask you certain questions that they feel that somebody should know, or somebody should at least be able to discuss in a carrying conversation, that you've got to understand. If they're asking you what's the price per square foot going in this area, or what's the things like that, and you're like, hey, I've got a pretty good understanding because I have been studying this market. So I tell our agents a lot, and I told somebody this not too long ago. Like I had a friend from college who got his pilot's license, and I will tell you this: if I got on that plane, and I heard his name come over the intercom, I'd probably exit the plane, because I'm not trying to jump on that plane, because I know that person. I've hung out with that person, and it's like, hey, I've got to overcome that as a young agent, as somebody. It's like, just because somebody knows you doesn't mean they're going to use you. That's just point blank. You've still got to be good at your job. Real estate, obviously, it does help to know people. It's very beneficial, but if your friend doesn't use you, a lot of agents get mad. I take that as like, all right, I got to do better. Clearly, I haven't shown to this friend of mine that I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm talking about, and they're going to be
And
better off using me.
what I like about that is that there's something you can do. Like, it is in the agent's control to go ahead, it is to basically research ahead of time and to have their stats like at
Mhm.
the top of their brain. Or hell, if your memory's not good, maybe you took a couple too many baseballs to the head. Maybe you need to like have a little cheat sheet before you go in. But at the end of the day, like, you are in a market where you could pull all the stats on Auburn, on Opelika, on some of the other surrounding areas, days on market, average sales price, amount of price reductions that are happening. You take all
Right.
the available data that's already free on the internet, and then a couple pieces that only a good realtor would know,
Right.
and have that every single week updated, so that you can then start conversations with clients, friends, people at the bar with those topics, so that they don't feel the need to ask you and test your credibility, because you're already volunteering and giving them that information.
When people say, "Hey, what are you seeing right now?" and when rates were low, it's like, "Hey, what I'm seeing is equity's gone up. People have a ton of equity in their house. Rates are low. They're taking cash out refis and they're buying investment properties, and making 12% on their dollar that they weren't making on a house, on the equity that's sitting in their house. And so you start having those conversations with people, and they go, hey, Evan's helped some people like make some money. And then somebody else mentions like, hey, I'm thinking about investing in something real estate wise. It seems like, rates are low. And then they're like, hey, go talk to Evan. He's helped some people do that. And so that's just kind of to me, if you don't know those things and you're not willing to have those conversations, then, they're not going to talk about you. They're not going to send their friends to you. So you just, and it's not shoving it down someone's throat necessarily. People like this industry. People like to talk about real estate. They like to talk about investing. They like to help their friend. They like to help their family in investing. Their financial situation. So you're not shoving something down their throat that they don't like. It's more so most of the time when I'm around a group of people and you ask them like, hey, how's work going? Whether it's a professor in Auburn or whatever, they're like, hey, yeah, I got a good group this semester. How's real estate? And that's as easy as, that's as simple as that conversation starts. It's not like, hey, let me tell you about buying real estate every time I see somebody. It's more so just being genuinely interested in someone else's career. Then they'll be.
And I think too, like the majority of people out there, number one, we all know that they're going home and watching $1 Million Listing and all of the crap shows on Netflix that my wife watches every single night. Whether no opinion on that, right. But when someone knows you're a realtor, and when someone is just looking to be a friendly human being and ask you a question,
right,
you hit the nail on the head. The most common question is, how's work? How's the market? What are you seeing? And then I think it's the realtor's job to simply always have updated stats, but also maybe some success stories from the past week. So right. When most people ask a realtor, like, hey, like, how you doing, man? It's right. Natural, but incorrect to say, oh, I'm slammed. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, I'm dying. Like that's what right. Crappy realtors say, or realtors who don't think. But for you to instead rattle off a success story of maybe a very challenging situation you had last week, and then what you did as the expert realtor to overcome that situation, that all of a sudden lets people know, like, wow, Evan knows what he's doing. Wow, Evan's helping people win. So like they're going to be then more likely to refer you to a friend or family member or maybe themselves.
Right. And it can even be, like a funny story from a home inspection that you had that they know that you're actively working. They know that you're actively helping people. You're doing home inspections. You're mentioning something that's within the process that they might not even think about.
Yeah.
And so it's just, like I said, it's intentional, but it's not hard to have that conversation.
Well, so let's go back to your early roots. So you got out of baseball, you moved back home. You have obviously family, friends in your community who kind of know you, but maybe you're back in town because you're often all over the world playing baseball. Right. You hadn't been a pillar of that community in a minute. Yeah. How did you get your first couple deals? Like what specific action did you put out there into the universe to get those deals? Because I'm assuming they didn't just come because you're an awesome person.
No, absolutely not. I would say, honestly, the first thing I did was called a lot of the guys I played with from all over the country. And I said, because I had contacts, not here really, like you said, I was gone for a while. And as the last time I was in Auburn I was a college student. So I wasn't really, I wasn't a staple in the community then either. And so I didn't really know anybody per se here. But I did reach out to all the guys I played with and said, hey, look, we're all, they were at the time where they were purchasing houses and some of them were purchasing very nice houses. And so I said, hey, a lot of them were at that age where they were starting to purchase a house. They may have had a newborn. And so it was like an opportunity for me to try to float my first couple months of like, hey, let me reach out to an agent and where you're looking to buy. And your wife, she's home by herself right now with a newborn. Like it's going to be tough for her to find somebody that she can trust to help her. And so And truly, that was my situation also. So I kind of understood that situation. And so I just said, let me see if I can interview some agents to make sure that they're trustworthy and somebody you should use. And so I did that. I did a lot of referrals from out of state, just interviewing agents. And honestly, it helped me build relationships. It helped me build knowledge too, just interviewing agents, learning what they do, how they did it. And that was the first couple months I was in the industry. But I was just trying to solve a problem of, hey, how do I get rolling already? And how do I learn at the same time? And then from there, just reaching out to everyone I knew. And that was honestly, and I don't know how many people I've really talked to this about. It was a little tough for me at first to say, hey, I'm in real estate now, because I had always been, hey, this is Evan, the baseball player, and that was kind of an identity thing. And so it was hard for me to call people and be like, hey, I'm in real estate now. Cause it's kind of like, oh, you didn't make it, huh? You didn't make it very long. Kind of thing. And that's what you felt like anyways. You kind of felt like you're calling somebody to tell them, hey, you just got fired. I'm trying something new. But I just had to overcome that and just say, hey, look, I'm in real estate. This is what I'm doing. I don't know everything, but I do have a great team around me. And at the time I actually joined the team, the brokerage that Matt, my business partner now, was at. And so he kind of mentored me coming in. And so I was able to lean on him some, saying, hey, what do I need to do in this situation if this happens? Because as you know, there's a bazillion different things that can happen in a real estate transaction. So I always had some good support coming in. And I think I was just willing. I was willing to ask questions. I was willing to not try to look smart all the time. I was just like, hey, I want to learn too. And I've got a group behind me that can help. I'm going to answer the phone. I'm going to be there. I'm going to do as much as I possibly can. And when it comes to the knowledge side, I'm learning, and I've got a group behind me that's going to handle all that. That's going to.
There's a lot to unpack there, but I mean, one of the first things I heard you say is that you called people from your former career and explained to them in a way that they could understand why you could help them. You basically reminded them of one of the pains they have, like, yeah, your wife's
Right.
at home, etc., and this is why I can help you. And you created your own business there because you didn't they didn't necessarily need you to help them in another market, but you offered immense value and were able to kind of in a happy way, weasel your way into 30% of that commission check.
Right.
And I think too many realtors forget that. Most people did not start in real estate when they were 22 out of college. Now, maybe 20% did, but 80% did not. And so for those people who maybe spent 5 or 10 years in another career and built trust and relationships and an understanding of how those industries worked, that is a great place to start when you get into real estate. Let those people know what the challenges of buying a house are for people that worked in that world, and then let them know how you can be the antidote to that problem. I think that's absolutely genius.
They all loved it. I mean, they're all like, oh, dude, thank you so much. My wife's been asking me about finding, a house, and asked me about finding somebody. And so I was like, let me just look, you're at spring training. You just handle that. I'll do this part. And they're like, thanks, dude. So, I think that was, again, it was, for me, it was like, hey, I gotta figure out a way to make some money.
So then when you were so obviously you had your baseball people. For people in your community, I'd say, how long did it take before you really rebuilt up that reputation that you were back in town, that you knew what you were doing? And what were there any steps you took to do that?
Most of it was just reaching out to people. Like I said, overcoming that fear of telling people that I was no longer a baseball player, because again, that was my identity. And then it was like, hey, I decided to make a change of hey, my identity now is this is Evan. He's the realtor in town. That's more of what I wanted to be, not the baseball player. And so I just had to overcome that and just start that conversation with a lot of people. I would go through my phone, but my system was pretty elementary. It was like, hey, today I'm calling all the A's in my phone. I'm going to tell them what I'm doing. And then the next day it was like, I'm going to call all the B's in my phone and tell them what I'm doing. And when I got to that 26th day, if I'm right, I think there's 26 letters in the alphabet, not a lot of X's or C's, but when I got to that point, I was circling back and I was coming back and following up with people. And that was just kind of the process I took, taking those notes of everybody that kind of gave me any kind of positive feedback, obviously trying to gather emails and things like that so I could send data to people that did show some interest in the possibility of selling or buying. And then I plugged in pretty tight with the chamber. Again, as a person that wasn't really professional in the community ever, that was important for me, was to plug in with other professionals in the community. And so I got.
What did that look like for you? Because every realtor, in the U.S. at least, has a local chamber of commerce,
Right.
And I think some bigger brokerages usually join and they're a business member. What did you actually do other than writing a check?
Right.
What was your involvement there, and what did it lead to?
So I went to a lot of ribbon cuttings and stuff, and congratulated business owners that were opening businesses. And then what I would do after that was write them a card. I'd write them a personal card and just say, hey, I enjoyed the ribbon cutting. Looking forward to, sending people your way, where we, and I think a lot of people understand that realtors are sort of the gatekeepers to the community. I mean, we're kind of the advocates of the community. We want people to move here. And when people move here, we're kind of their first line of defense of, hey, where do I get my tires changed? Where do I, where's the best coffee shop or whatever? And so once they kind of understand that, then they do want to have those conversations with you. And so I would write them a card, let them know, hey, I can't wait to send some people your way, and then see them at the next chamber event, and then have a conversation with them, and then go to lunch with them. And this just, always trying to connect with people. And again, not in a way where I'm trying to push real estate down their throat, just more of I'm trying to learn more about you and your business. And the more interested you are in other people, the more they're typically, the deeper the relationship is, and the deeper the relationship, the more trust, and the more trust, the more people they want to send you.
I love that. I mean, what business, like, what, number one, I like that you're not showing up and then asking for business afterwards.
Right.
You're actually saying the opposite. You're saying, like, hey, I actually work with a lot of buyers who are moving here. They don't know anyone. I'm trying to meet every new business that I can figure out if you might be a good fit for my clients so that I can give you business. Like,
Right.
you're literally offering to help them and send them money and help feed their family. And then, of course, the better businesses are going to be like, well, hey, Evan, tell me
Right.
about you. Tell
Right.
me about your experience and your story. And I think that's when there's a real match, is when they ask you questions back. But
Absolutely.
that is a strategy that any agent in the US that's listening could start doing. And if I just had to guess, like, when you're at a chamber event, how many other realtors on average are you seeing? My assumption is there's probably 30 member agents who are a member of the chamber, and maybe you and one other who show up to a handful of the events.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Most of them don't do the active part. I think a lot of people use the chambers. They just, like you said, write the check and then have their name on there, hoping that somebody moving into town looks at the chamber for some reason and finds an agent on there, which is not really, it's kind of like, I say this to our agents too a lot about other tools, but it's kind of like a treadmill. It's not going to do you any good if it sits over there in the corner. If you just bought one and then you just let it collect dust, you kind of got to use it. And it's the same thing with anything like the chamber. It's, hey, it's not going to work if you just join and just hang out. But if you actually use it and you go and you use it for what it's worth, the networking and the meeting new people and the building relationships, because this is a relationship business. I mean, real estate is obviously it's transactional, and obviously it's knowledge based, but it's, I mean, if we're all being honest with ourselves, it's relationship based. People want to trust who's handling their real estate. And so, again, you've got to have a relationship with somebody in order for them to trust you. And so, if you're not using, I went to, I became a, oh gosh, what was it called? It was a ambassador of the chamber, which is just like a group of people we would go to most of the events, and then we would connect with each other, and we would hand out the magazines and stuff like that. And again, I would follow up with everybody that I was handling the magazine to. I would, write them a card. I'm big on handwritten cards. So I'd write a lot of cards to people. I'd write them to every lender that I did a transaction with, every client I did a transaction with. I would handwrite cards to everybody. And I think it's kind of a lost art, and it stands out a little bit these days. And so, pretty much everybody I'd meet, I'd write a card, and I would say, like, hey, who else? Who I like you? Who are you friends with? I mean, I feel like I could jive with your friends. Is there anybody I should reach out to? And they'd be like, yeah, actually, so and so, so and so, and I'd write them a card. I mean, weirdly enough, one of our agents, a friend of mine, was like, hey, I got a guy you need to meet. He was like the head of the Parks and Recs around here. He knows a bunch of people, and I was like, oh, that'd be awesome. So I wrote him a card, and I was like, hey, it's like a love letter. Like, hey, I know we've never met before, but I would love to go get lunch with you sometime. And he called me and was like, yeah, man, sounds great. And then about a year or two later, he was like, actually, I'm getting out of this. I think I want to be in real estate, and can I join your team? And so now he's, on our team. And so just finding ways to connect with people. And again, I think it's got to be unselfish. It's truly got to find some type of joy, I think, in learning about others and hearing their story and seeing in what ways you can contribute to them. So
Ironically, the bad pun that I was going to make is that you simply need to have more at bats. So I mean,
well,
like, baseball world kind of plays into this too.
yeah, you're
Now,
gonna swing and miss too. Let me tell you.
yeah, right. You gotta have a lot of swing and misses.
Yeah.
Now, I know you have a lot of knowledge on the construction side of things, and I just wanted to chat with you really quickly about that. How, like, I know you helped your grandfather build some houses back in the day. What is your knowledge of construction, and how do you think that's helped you become a better agent for your clients? And what base types of things should every agent learn about regarding constructions and inspections to just make them like a passably okay agent?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and actually, when I first got done playing, I worked construction with a framing crew in the morning. So I would go at 6 a.m. till noon and frame, and we'd deck houses. And then at noon, I told the guy that I was working with, I said, hey, look, at noon till night, I want to try to start up my real estate business. And so that was kind of, but again, I was trying to find a way to feed my family. And so, and that gave me actually the opportunity to meet a lot of builders that we worked for. I mean, locally that knew me after that and knew that I was getting into real estate, because I'd have those conversations with them and ask them, questions. Again, I'm not scared to look dumb. I already look dumb enough, so I'm not scared to pile it on. But so I would meet, all these builders from there, and just again, whenever I got into the real estate world, they're like, oh yeah, I remember you did some framing and stuff, and it's like, we've represented a lot of them in their new construction around here. We've done a lot of developments around here where we've done full neighborhoods where we've represented builders, and again, some of that's from those relationships, and some of it is from the knowledge of understanding the building process. I would say, for an agent, obviously, like around here, a big thing is crawl space issues because the moisture that we have in the southeast. Understanding what can come from severe moisture in a crawl space, and not just because we're also a caveat emptor state here. We're a buyer beware state. I think there's only like 2 left maybe in the whole U.S. where you're fully responsible for all the inspections and all the due diligence of the home. There's no really seller disclosure at all. And so it's very important to understand those kind of things, because people that are buying houses, not everybody sees a inspection every day. Not everybody sees a crawl space every day, and they might go, oh, that doesn't seem that bad. And it's like, well, there's no moisture barrier here, and there's been signs of past moisture, and there's some cupping in the wood flooring, which is going to be a further issue because your subfloors are already wet. And so I think for us around here, that's a big thing, is water intrusions, and moisture can become far more troublesome than.
Well, I think regardless of where a realtor is, like by you, that's the common problem. But there's agents
Right.
in different areas where there's a
Right.
similar type of thing that they need to be aware of. Because at
Correct.
the end of the day, like whether the sellers have to disclose it or not,
Right.
a normal customer, especially a first-time home buyer, if they get into a really bad situation, they are going to be left with a bad taste in their mouth regarding you, the realtor, and regarding the real estate process as a whole. And I
Right.
always say, like, our job as real estate professionals is to make people want to buy houses again. Like,
Right.
make the process so awesome and so stress free that I want to buy an investment property next year, or I
Right.
want to buy a vacation home in 5 years, so that as my income grows, I can continue to use you to buy more properties. Too many
Yep.
agents kind of get away from that, and they finish the transaction, they move on to the next one, and it's kind of, you're then always hungry for deals.
Right. And
Before we end
you want them to
here,
tell somebody else. You want them to
yeah,
tell somebody else that it was a great transaction. It was a fun time. I had a great time. Hey, he saved us from buying this house that now I see they're ripping the fascia off of it because it had problems that he caught. And then they're very thankful to you, and then they're going to send you to everybody.
well, it's too easy to like try to. It's too easy to be eager to try to get the sale across.
Right.
However, there's oftentimes more deals on the back end when you can guide them and tell them no a couple times to build some
Far
trust. Now, I know that you, as one of the top teams in the Auburn-Opelika area, you know why it's a great area. But we always like to end the show by having you just kind of brag on your community really quick,
Yeah.
so that when an agent listening has someone moving to your area, they're armed with a little bit of local market knowledge, but also they can then maybe get your contact information and get you a referral if they have one.
Sure. Yeah. So we, I'll tell you this. We're obviously, Auburn is a college town, so there's always something to do. There's sporting events all the time for the kids, and we've got a great little downtown that's, it's a mixture of young college students, which keeps you a little younger. For somebody who's hitting 40 right now, it keeps me feeling a little
I'm
younger.
in the same boat, dude.
And then we've got Opelika, which is where our office is kind of it's a very historic railroad town. It's been really revitalized. There's breweries and distilleries and some stuff like that. My favorite part about being here for me and my family is we're big into hiking. That's like our favorite thing in the world to do. We're 3 hours from North Georgia, so we're not far. We're right over the Georgia line, so we're about an hour and a half from Atlanta. Which again, Atlanta you can get anywhere in the world pretty quickly. So we're an hour and a half from a really big airport hub. We're 3 hours from the beach down Gulf Shores, Destin, that kind of area. And there's a big Birmingham's a fairly large city. It's about 2 hours from us, hour 45. So there's a lot of things within reach. And then as far as the state goes, I mean, school systems wise, we're one of the top in the school system. It's a bit of a melting pot because of the university for Alabama. So that's, culturally it's great. Really all around. I mean, affordability is it's a little high for Alabama, but if you look anywhere else, again, my wife and I, whenever my wife's from Colorado originally, and when I was getting done playing, we were like, where are we going to go? Like, we can go kind of anywhere. Neither one of us were from here. And we looked around a lot of different places. We looked in all over, and we were like, man, it's expensive there. It's, school systems. We got to go to private school there. Or we got to, and so for us, it's very safe community, good school systems, close to things we love to do. And
What more could you want?
what more could you want?
I love that.
So,
Well,
yeah.
Evan, if someone has a client that's moving to Alabama, how would they get a hold of you so that they can ensure their client works with someone who knows their stuff and is passionate about the community?
Yeah, our website is www.crawfordwillisgroup.com. We try to keep it simple. Our Instagram is at crawfordwillisgroup.com. And then my number is 334-558-8700. So, I mean, I'm always reachable. And like I said, website, you can go on there and you'll get one of our agents. And again, we're a tight knit group. Everybody's very, very knowledgeable about the area and highly seasoned. So there's only 5 of us now. So we're rocking and rolling and like I said,
I love that. Well, Evan, I'm glad that we didn't have to sacrifice any animals during the making of this podcast. Not to reiterate a bad joke.
Skated by.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it.